It's in conversation that you discover the details that make for a good story, and that's how we gathered the minutia that supported a truth, dashed a myth, or even made it funnier. And sometimes you just heard stuff that was totally made up. So in the market, was that 20 seconds? Oh, here we go. In the market, the self-appointed tour guide is often seen making a giant sweeping arm gesture toward the ceiling, proclaiming that this was once a train station, which it never was. Honest mistake, the architect who designed it also installed the same ceiling in 20 U.S. train stations, including Grand Central Station. There's an untruth that the days of operation at the market were synced with the delivery of ice needed before refrigeration. The Iceman never cameth to the West Side Market, which always produced its own ice. Shopping days were set opposite those of other public Cleveland markets to make sure that fresh food was accessible regularly. This mural hung over the balcony window from '79 to 2001, the work of a local artist who won a contest to create it. Everyone hated it because it blocked light airflow and it just didn't belong. Apparently, the artist never set foot in the market before the day her work was installed, where she was quoted as saying, "Oops." There's a rumor that the clock in the tower has kept time in Ohio City for 100 years. It did for the first 50 when it was hand-wound on a weekly basis, but once electricity was run to the clock around 1953, it stopped keeping accurate time, but the neighborhood still relies on its presence. The basement of the market is off-limits to the public, which leads to wild speculation. The most popular rumor, even once reported in the newspaper, is that there's a slaughterhouse down there. With the exception of the occasional customer who sneaks the dog into the market, no animal has ever walked in on all fours. Throughout the first 70 years or so, some foods arrived in big wooden barrels, mainly sauerkraut and chicken. Rumor had it that a couple of market tough guys, loosely connected with Danny Green and the Cleveland Mafia, used the barrels in the dark corners of the basement to hone their own special butchering skills. And if that isn't enough to make you cringe, there's always a lot of talk about workers having sex in the coolers between trips to and from the market floor, because after all, doesn't this look really romantic? I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure it's made up because it's always 38 degrees down there. In a competitive environment, there are always disagreements between vendors. A former market manager recalls a hysterical mother and her bloody child standing in his office, but he was more horrified to discover that the red stuff was that of tomatoes flung across the aisles in an argument over stolen customers. There were mumblings, but no documentation that someone had died in the market. Turns out that one Labor Day, Cleveland firefighters showed up in black suits and ties to pick up a pig for their annual pig roast. They stuffed it in a body bag and escorted it ceremoniously out of the market, and it was the start of a really beautiful rumor. Many people shared memories of buying a live chicken at the market and taking it home on the streetcar where it would peck at fellow passengers or get loose in the aisles. But the market never ever sold live chicken. Rather, they came from the poultry house that's now the Market Garden Brewery. People often mistake the produce arcade for a farmer's market, perhaps by its appearance. But the market never has and never will be a true farmer's market. It was conceived to be a year-round market, a source for food for a community, although today a lot of vendors offer seasonally and locally grown foods. Those people who greet visitors from the parking lot are not panhandlers, but vendors from the Cleveland Street Chronicle, which is written by some of Cleveland's homeless, who invest in the issues and then resell them at this coveted location. The generosity of market shoppers has resulted in keeping some of these people off the street. Cooler boys are young muscle that performed grunt work at the market. Vendors would initiate them by telling them to go fetch the counter stretcher, go fetch a bucket of steam, or a left-handed screwdriver, and all that did was result in an exhausted new hire, because obviously these things do not exist. Nothing ever shut the market down, rain, sleet, tons of snow, until the fire of January of this year, which closed it down for 11 days for a thorough scrubbing including that of this 100-year and iconic steer, which was returned to the Ehrenfeld family, the original owners. A new steer hangs in its place. The customer is always right, even when they're weird. Corden Fernangle tells of a couple that came to his stand toting a big suitcase. They bought a 25-pound primal cut of beef, packed it unwrapped in the luggage, and left, never to be seen again. And why they were packing a rump roast still remains a mystery to this day. Mario Rini told us that over time in the late 1930s, he etched his name in the granite doorway on the loading dock while he waited for some produce to come up from storage. It is still there, covered with a couple of coats of paint and a black marker graffiti. Your clue to find it is look for the word Poochie. The market appeared to be a man's world, but there were many women who were proprietors and business owners too. Mrs. DeGrandis, shown here, ran a produce stand with her husband. She sat on the board of the Merchants Association, but then she would take the bus home in the middle of the day to nurse her babies. A constant debate at the market is about the hours of operation. Open it earlier, stay open later, open Sundays. Many of the vendors will tell you leave it just like it's always been, but we found that in photos of the market over time, you would catch glimpses of the signs outside the market that would prove to us that the hours always changed. You have to look closely. Market days end when vendors drape a patchwork of tablecloths and covers over their counters. It might be to keep the dust off, the glass clean, or it might be a deterrent to those who help themselves. But when vendors were asked why they do this, most are hard-pressed for an answer. They don't know. It's just always how it's been done. Thank you.